Hi everyone, and welcome to the final session of our digital marketing series, the 2026 Playbook Strategic Bets to Win the Year. I'm Daniel Bianchini, and I'm joined today by Sam, Shane, and Matthew, three brilliant strategists who've each brought huge value across the series. Over the last few weeks, we've explored everything from AI and geo to metrics, customer journeys, content strategy, and more. But today's session is different. This one's all about putting all of the threads together and answering the big questions. What really matters as we head into 2026? We're going to be covering the 5 biggest bets to focus on next year, the mistakes to avoid, and the strategies that will actually build resilience in a world of rising costs, shifting patterns, and non-linear journeys. We'll also look at where budgets should flex, how attribution needs to evolve, and why now is the time to reframe how we define success. And with that, let's dive in with the first question. Shane, I'm going to come to you first, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Looking back at 2025, what do you think are the biggest lessons marketers should carry into 2026, and what should they be doing differently as a result?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few lessons for a lot of marketers. I think one of the big ones is probably having over relied too much on paid media. It's still obviously a viable channel, one of the most viable channels, but I think we've seen quite a bit of change in 2025, both in terms of rising cost per click, but also challenges around sort of privacy and how much data you can actually see in terms of targeting and reporting. I think it can often be the kind of default go-to channel because it's obviously tried and tested. You spend X, you get Y. It's a great channel, but I think for those who have relied too much on it, they might have got a bit of a shock this year in terms of those rising cost per clicks and everything else. And if you don't have another channel to turn to or to support your marketing efforts, they can put you in a bit of a sticky situation.
Okay, so you're saying that you feel an over-reliance on paid, and I'm going to go over to Sam now because obviously Sam's focus around paid and things like. What are your thoughts here, Sam? Do you think there's an over-reliance on paid? Do you think it's changed a bit? And how do you see that that's going to obviously move into 2026?
I think in the past there's been over-reliance on one channel, and whether that might be paid search or Meta, Facebook, Instagram to drive all your business. I think it is Shane's right, you need to diversify across. And for me, with what I'm doing for my clients already, is trying to get them to look at like whether it's performance max within Google, but also looking at some of the other platforms that are out there now with, say, Snapchat ads, Spotify ads, YouTube, LinkedIn. So it's really trying to sort of not just rely on one area and build it, sort of build out your sort of awareness, because people aren't just clicking, like doing one search, clicking one ad and then converting. It's a lot more messier now than it ever was. So it's trying to reach people at different stages, different touch points to get them basically to do what you want them to do on your website.
So I guess what you're saying there is like there is an over-reliance on one channel, but that channel may just be, say, let's just say Google Ads, for example. So therefore diversify. Do we feel that we should also be diversifying into other channels such as organic and geo and email and digital PR and things like that? Matt, what do you think?
I think definitely diversification, because if you're essentially relying on a single channel and the metrics of that change, as we've seen in paid, that can be incredibly problematic. I think some of the things that kind of channel is slightly separate. I think it's that we need a lot more focus around revenue or kind of the key metrics for a business. So it might be that obviously paid is great for that, or AI, geo or SEO is all great for that. But I think there's still a lot of marketing activity in general that doesn't focus around a core metric, and kind of they're doing it because they've always done it in essence, as opposed to there being, here's the metric that we're trying to impact, and here's the impact that this particular channel is going to have on that, and here's why we need to allocate budget to that, or here's why we don't need to allocate budget to that, basically. So I think it's making sure everything is linked to a commercial goal, so it's less around I guess, less around an individual channel and more around kind of what the outcome that you're trying to achieve is. I also think that there needs to be a bit more speed within marketing as well. So one of the things that we've seen in the last 12 months is the pace of change, certainly around kind of a shift from, or how Google have impacted the SEO, the search results, basically. That has changed significantly, but I still think a lot of people are still doing SEO like it's a year ago, essentially, and that's not going to win. So you need to have that flexibility around channel, that flexibility around the tactical impact, the tactical things within that channel, and kind of just making sure that you have a strategic impact and revenue-based impact on everything.
And I think, I mean, it's a very valid point. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've just touched upon here, we have gone through in a bit more detail in the other sessions that we've been. But revenue's always been one of those points that have been a common thread throughout. It's all about getting back to that revenue. How are we driving revenue? How are we impacting the numbers that we're being given, and trying to get those KPIs? I think that's a really important thing. I think it's not something that's really new, but something I feel that's going to be pushed into the fore in 2026 with a lot of the changes that are being made. So I think what you're saying is correct. And it sort of leads me into if you were to narrow down as we moved into 2026, what are the must-do things, must-do bets that you'd want to do? And Matt, I'll stick with you for this one.
Yeah, I think essentially it's kind of linked to my previous point. People need to go into it a bit more strategic. So what we've been seeing, what's worked really well is just kind of doing lots and lots of activity, lots and lots of campaigns and that kind of stuff. So it's always been activity over strategy for a lot of marketers, I think, where realistically the shift needs to be, and it should have, like the shift should have been a while ago, kind of who's my audience, what activity do I need to do to maximize the returns from that audience. So rather than kind of blindly going quickly and changing stuff, because I referenced kind of being a bit quicker previously, rather than kind of just blindly being quick, kind of be strategically being quick effectively. So quick to change your strategy and then execute, as opposed to just quick to roll out lots of different campaigns, basically. So I think that's my kind of one of the key things that we need to be looking at in 2026, basically. And then the other thing is kind of integration, and that's integration within channels, integration within teams, just kind of general overall integration, basically, because again, working with lots of clients, we often see teams are siloed. So kind of you're not sharing the right information between teams, you're not able to measure things, budgets are kind of split arbitrarily because team X needs Y, team Y needs something else. So it's kind of making sure that you're integrating everything, whether that's your marketing, so you can use that across channels, but also how you work integrated with teams as well. So are your sales team realistically sharing the right information with your marketing team or the data team or that kind of stuff? So making sure that you've got that combined approach as a business, not just siloed departments.
And I think a lot of that comes down to communication, right? Whether that's with internal teams such as the sales and marketing product team, but also your external team. If you have agency or freelance support, it's really important that everybody is being communicated to in the right way and kept on board and kept up to date with everything that's going on. Because if you're not, then some things could slip and cause some issues. So it's a really valid point. Shane, I mean, what do you think in terms of that must-do bet in terms of 26?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few sort of specific things that brands should definitely do for next year. Just before I get onto that, I really want to underline the point that Matt made about strategy, because I think that probably is the biggest one. When you consider the amount of change we're seeing with the impact of AI, the kind of changes on the paid media side of things, user behavior and how that's changing as well, I think it'd be a really big mistake just to carry on doing things the way that you think have always worked and hoping for the same results in 2026. I don't think there's ever been a more important time to take a step back and look at your wider digital marketing strategy than there is at the moment. But in terms of a specific thing that I think brands must do, it's for me, it would be around the GEO side of things. So making sure that your brand and your website, your products and your services are discoverable in AI assistants, because the rate of usership is just growing exponentially, and there's no reason to expect that to slow down. And I think anyone who doesn't have that as a part of their strategy for next year is just it's such a missed opportunity. You're going to be playing catch up when you inevitably do add it in. So yeah, I'd say that's for me, that's the one thing that I would definitely recommend having in the next year.
And again, I guess before you get to that strategic piece and going into Geo, you need to understand where you are now, right? In terms of that visibility, and maybe running a snapshot report to understand, okay, my brand is here in Geo at the moment. What do I need to do? What's the strategy element needs to do from that point?
Yeah, exactly that. And for a lot of brands, that might be the only thing they can do. Obviously, there are budget constraints and everything else, and resource. So I'd say, as an absolute minimum, having that visibility of how your brand is performing in these tools would be my absolute priority. Once you get to sort of see where you are in AI assistance, you can then maybe kind of build in a bit of activity around trying to improve that as well. But as a minimum, yeah, just having that visibility is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we could obviously help with if anyone needs. And just coming over to yourself, Sam, I mean, what do you think you see as the must-do bets going into 2026? Obviously, Matt's highlighted strategy, and Shane's gone down the geo route. What do you think? Do you agree? Is there anything addition that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think what unlocks a lot is having really like knowing what's working now, and what like being really good conversion tracking, because that will help improve things in the future, because there's lots of different ways you can use it. So I think focusing on to be able to focus on strategy and what to do, you need to know what's worked well and what drives the most revenue for you at the moment, and sort of moving away from sort of some vanity metrics where it's just impressions and clicks, and even sort of top of the funnel like leads. I want to be able to know what's driving those MQLs, SQLs, pipeline revenue, like the campaigns, not just within Google Ads or on the sort of paid channels, but across the board. Because I think once you have that information, you can then build out really strong strategies. It will allow you to quickly change your route depending on what the results are saying, whereas you're going in less blind when you have that data. And also being able to gather your own first party data to feed that back into some platforms like Google Ads that will help their algorithms and the sort of results that you'll see too. So for me, the first step is making sure that you've got that really strong conversion tracking in place and investing in it now, not just knowing what top lead, that what drives the most leads, because at the end of the day, if that's low quality leads, doesn't really matter too much. You want to know what's driving you that high quality traffic that is converting.
Yeah, it makes absolutely sense that we have all of the data that can inform the strategy, and make those changes, as well as introducing new channels like you. And sort of like moving forward and staying with yourself, Sam, around what should marketers be looking to either dial down, do less of, maybe even stop as we move into 2026? What do you think is going to be the key things there?
So I touched upon it in the last one, is like stop focusing on some of the vanity metrics like impressions, clicks, things that don't drive the real impact, or I've seen it quite a few times, targeting keywords because the C-suite wants to see an ad there. That just needs to stop. Marketing budgets are very unlikely to grow year on year, but cost per clicks are rising. You've got to make every click count, so you've got to be really thoughtful what you're doing and making sure you are driving the right traffic to the site. So for me, it's less focusing on that, these impressions, clicks, even cost per click. I don't mind it going up if the quality of traffic's going improving, and at the end of the day, that pipeline, that revenue number is growing too, because that's going to keep people who I want to keep people happy. So that's sort of what I think people need to sort of be moving away from, is focusing on the numbers that make a difference and that actually matter.
Yeah, so I guess those numbers are going to allow you to be ruthless as well. I mean, something we talked a lot about in the previous sessions, and things like making those really ruthless decisions and moving forward, and sort of focusing really around quality, making sure the data is accurate, and then obviously getting information back from the CRM. It's really valuable. And Matt, just coming to you next in terms of some of the things that you feel that people should either do less of or dial down, or potentially even stop this year. Coming into.
I mean, linked to what Sam's done, you could probably go, what Sam's mentioned rather, you could probably go one step up in the metrics. So we work with a lot of B2B clients, obviously, and quite commonly kind of MQLs or even things like demo requests are seen as a kind of a really key metric. But realistically, actually, what we've seen is significantly more important is SQLs, not MQLs. You want the right people on those kind of demo requests, the right kind of audience. So I would go probably a step further than Sam and go, actually, should you be recording like MQLs rather than like focus more on the stuff that generates into revenue rather than just a blanket volume of MQLs or that kind of thing. So making sure, I guess, to stop doing is focusing on the wrong metrics because you can show big growth in them. Effectively, it's focused on the right metrics, and it might be actually MQLs go down, but the quality is significantly better, and that's what you need to focus on. Especially if you're paying more for click, you're paying more to get that lead. You need to make sure that it's significantly higher quality. Obviously, as a kind of an SEO person, I would also say, and if you've still been doing this, you're probably a bit late to the game, but stop creating content purely for the sake of Google's algorithm. It should have been for some time creating content for your audience. And by audience, I also mean a very specific audience. Stop creating generic top of the funnel content or even generic middle of the funnel content. Talk to the audience that you want to talk to, not to everybody, basically. If you can build that expertise, authority, and build trust in a particular area. Trust is one of those things that can shorten sales cycles significantly. So if you can build that trust by being an authority within a particular area, definitely kind of go down that route, basically. So stop writing things for Google. Google aren't going to buy your stuff. The people who are your audience that might have zero search volume. It might get 3 visits per month from organic. But having that piece of content on your site where people might navigate to it, you might get the right 3 people who have got millions of pounds worth of spend. Focus on those people, focus on your audience, not on an algorithm. And similarly for AI as well. Obviously, tweak your approach to accommodate AI. Don't write for AI though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Everything should be focused on ICP and audience base. I completely agree with that with any of the channels that we're focusing on. So thanks, mate, Matt. And in moving over to you, Shane, in terms of, I mean, what do you feel as we come towards 2026 that people should be dialing down on or stopping potentially?
Yeah, I mean, definitely all the points that Sam and Matt raised, completely agree with those. I think for me, the one thing I would stop doing if you're still doing it is treating channels as silos. It's never been a good idea to kind of take that siloed approach, but I think now with all of the changes that are going on, it's a really bad idea. I mean, we did a webinar a couple of episodes ago about the customer journey and how it's really fragmented and how it's never just someone landed on Google, come to your website, making that purchase. It's really messy. People go to review sites, they go to social, they come through paid, they come through organic. And if you're just looking at it through the lens of one channel in terms of how performance is going, you're going to be working off the wrong data and have the wrong insights. And it's never been a good idea, but I think today it's probably a really, really bad idea. So I definitely stop doing that if you're watching this and still doing it today.
Yeah, I think the points that you're making is really, really valuable. And I think the audience should be really taking away this sort of insight to make sure that they're focusing on removing some of this from their upcoming strategies, or at least considering removing them if it's right for them as a business. And sticking with you, Shane, as we move going forward and stuff like that, what are the areas that people should double down on? What should we be really focusing on, if there are any, as we move into the new year?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are some general ideas that will apply to most brands, but I think in reality, it's going to be quite sort of brand specific. So for one brand, it may be that organic's working really well and you're seeing a kind of demonstrable ROI. In that case, I would certainly double down on that. Similarly with PPC or any other channel that's working, I'd say if you've got something that's working and there's a chance to scale it, absolutely double down on that. outside of the kind of specific use cases, I think one area that I would recommend double downing on is brand building. It's obviously a really essential thing for marketing in general, but in terms of SEO, in terms of GEO, you could argue in terms of PPC and social media as well. Growing your brand presence touches all those different channels, and it will essentially lift the performance of all of those channels as well. So that can be things like PR, it can be things like tactical sort of coverage online. There's lots that goes into brand building content, etc. Top of the funnel, sort of awareness and everything else. I think it's one thing that can be difficult to measure, or a bit more of a challenge to measure compared to something like paid ads, for example. So it doesn't always get the attention I think it deserves. But I think going into 2026, it's probably going to be the differentiator for a few brands in terms of whether they win or they don't.
Mhm. Okay, so that, I mean, that's quite a large sort of thing that people are going to double down on, and may take quite a bit of time and things like that. Is there any particular area or part of that they make you start as a starting point just to get going?
I mean, I've worked in SEO for well over a decade now, so I tend to see things through that lens. So I'd say if we look at brand building from an SEO point of view, you could focus on things like link building, getting coverage online. It could be digital PR, both in the kind of larger sense where it's obviously kind of resource heavy and time intensive, but the rewards tend to align with that. Or you can even do more tactical digital PR where you're reacting to a news story, or you're adding a comment to a kind of ongoing trend. So it doesn't necessarily always require large budget pots or kind of internal resource. It's obviously something we can help with as an agency as well. So yeah, I think if people are watching this and looking for somewhere to start, I tend to lean to the elements that impact SEO and GEO, because there's obviously that additional benefit to it as well.
Yeah, no, I get that. And coming to you, Sam, in terms of some of the things that you would double down on as you move forward. Obviously, Shane's talked about some of the more organic side of stuff, if you like, and the bigger picture around topical authority and things. Sam, when would you start?
So we've seen it already in 2025. Google is having more control over bids, targeting, and things like that. So I think you need to double down on what you can control and have a bigger impact on, and what's going to make you stand out from your competitors, which for me is creative, so images, videos. People are getting a lot more ad fatigue quicker now, so there needs to be a lot more testing and a quicker turnover of them, especially video. Like if you read between the lines of what Google reps are saying, video is getting more and more important, and I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger in 2026. Also, another thing that often gets forgotten about is landing pages. So you need to make sure that every click you get is costing you more. So you need to make sure it converts. It's more likely to convert. So invest in those sort of landing pages, getting them focused for driving those leads, getting them to do what you want them to do. And touched on it already, but with that conversion tracking, it all helps with what you can help and control, make you different within a lot of the ad platforms, and it's providing that first party data. I sort of take a step back a little bit on and not so stress over sort of not like bids and things like that, where Google's generally good at that. So trust it and double down on things that you can make a real difference on.
Yeah, that makes total sense in terms of like those creative elements that we've talked about again in the paid media session, a few other areas where that's your differentiator. That's how you can really stand out from the crowd a lot more. And obviously, from a budgetary perspective, I mean, to keep trying to change those, you reduce the fatigue element. So that's really valuable advice. Matt, coming to you lastly, in terms of like, where do you think we should be doubling down? Is there anything different that you would suggest from what Shane and Sam have said, or yeah, would you?
Yeah, I guess mine is more kind of looking at the broader overall elements. So essentially, especially this time of year, it's really good to make sure that you've got the double down on your data. Basically, are you able to measure everything that you need to measure? Is it accurate? Are you then taking actions based upon data? There's still a lot of gut feel that goes on in digital, which is, to me, like, it's unbelievable given the volume of data that we have compared to other marketing channels, not to be using that data to craft and learn your campaigns, kind of, you realistically for most campaigns you should have that, what is that one metric, which that metric goes well, we double down. If that metric goes badly, we just kill this as quickly as possible and move on. When you've got a limited budget, as most marketers do, just kind of flogging a dead horse is not really worth it. Linked into that is kind of, again, the cross-function, cross-team element. So the strategy and the planning, I would really double down on trying to get that significantly more integrated than from what we see from an agency kind of working with a lot of clients. We see it very siloed around marketing doesn't talk to sales, or they don't, or the product team has suddenly released a new product. So you've got to drop everything that you've got planned for marketing to do that product launch. So I know actually, if you have a combined approach and a combined strategy with combined metrics, you can then go, actually, this product launch is coming up in 3 months. I need to start my SEO now. I need my paid ads ready to go. I need my sales team with this information, with these kind of objection handling things. So definitely around kind of getting that, if you're looking to do your strategy and your planning now, and you're still kind of, here's my marketing one and here's my sales one, they need to be combined. The other one is kind of where people need to double down is testing. And it's interesting because obviously Sam mentions testing a lot, and that's because it's quite prevalent in paid, but it's really not as prevalent in content creation, for example. So people will churn out the same style of blogs or the same style of content, and it's actually, you need to test and learn and iterate in the same way that you do with an ad in the style of content you're creating, because what people consumed or how people consumed it 2 years ago isn't how they're consuming it now, effectively. So kind of seeing what works for you. We do quite a lot of work with clients around resource sections, and you can really clearly identify, if you write on this particular topic, this style of content, this length of content, it converts at 3 times the rate of a completely different piece of content. So it's the working smarter, not harder aspect of that. And then the final thing is, again, when you're looking at combining stuff, is double down on combining when you're looking at content or that kind of stuff, combining and building in your CRO, essentially. So realistically, as digital marketers and SEOs, and to a certain extent PPC people, you've been able to offset really poorly converting websites, or websites where the messaging's wrong, or whatever it may be, just by generating more and more traffic. The days of being able to generate more and more traffic cheaply are behind us, essentially. So Google's eating the traffic at the top of the funnel, as are the LLMs. There's more competition on paid. So everything that you create should be optimized for your audience, optimized for conversion. Even just getting your messaging right, and kind of what appeals to your audience. So do your audience care about kind of outcome-based messaging? They want to see the like data on how your product or service has impacted somebody, like a business like theirs, or do they want the kind of the top level emotion-based marketing, whatever it may be? So kind of doing that test, learn, make sure you're speaking to your audience, making sure you're optimizing everything. That's definitely where I would double down. And as Shane mentioned as well, kind of linked into that trust build bit that I mentioned earlier about kind of shortening sales cycles, building the brand. If you've gone past that kind of startup phase and your market and your brand and your kind of business has matured, you should be kind of allocating more into brand building, because essentially the market is finite for any product or service. So once you hit that saturation and that kind of awareness within your market, in reality, it's about it's building you as the go-to provider for that product or service. So allocating more into, if that's the stage you're at, allocating more into brand building, as Shane mentioned.
I think that what all 3 of you have sort of compiled is a lot for people to do, and we're not saying that you should be doing all of this straight away and everything like that. It goes back to the strategy, and then you double down on the elements that are important to you as a business and that are going to allow you to hit your metrics. I think what it is important to say is that strategy metrics are a key one, and then everything sort of comes back out of that as to sort of the other tactics and channels and the elements to work on. I think just like moving forward, and just for the audience, Matt, and staying with you here, is how should marketers sort of plan budgets differently this year than they may have done into 2025 or potentially previously in previous years?
I think some general things. Obviously, the landscape is changing very quickly. So I understand why people budget annually, but realistically, you probably need to be rebudgeting on a quarterly basis, maybe kind of increase that cadence of budget. So where you're allocating stuff, you need that flexibility to kind of move things as they're working or as the market changes. And then I'm a big proponent, whether it's paid or whether it's elsewhere, just kind of having that innovation budget, basically. So a lot of people, for example, if they set their budget at the start of 2024, probably didn't have anything in there for AI. So having that kind of either the ability to re-budget or rebalance your budgets regularly, quarterly maybe, or having that free budget to take advantage of new trends as they come up, or to double down on a particular tactic or whatever it may, or a particular campaign. Definitely kind of have that flexibility is where I'd change the budgeting. Obviously, there's specific things around where you'd allocate budget, but those would be my core rules.
I think it's really interesting to go from like that annual budgeting more down to a more quarterly sprint variation of it, maybe, where you're looking at a 3-month sprint and then looking at the next 3-month sprint. I don't know if the CFO is going to be happy with that, Matt, because obviously they're going to have to do some of the work. But just like moving to you, Shane, in terms of like the budgets, how this will be play out differently, what are you expecting to happen here? And is there any areas that you feel that may be needing budget or maybe being taken away?
Yeah, I think the point that Matt made is definitely the one that I would go to first, having flex in the budget, but also I think Matt referred to it as an innovation budget. I think you should always have a budget pot for testing. It's, you know, for certain channels you always do, but with all the change that we're seeing at the moment, it's not just a nice to have. I think it's a necessity. And I think another thing that I think brands and marketers need to realize, and again, this might be something that the CFO won't particularly like, is that not all of this testing budget will deliver results or even an ROI. You know, there are new channels, there's GEO, the existing channels are changing and quite rapidly, and marketers need a chance to see what works and what doesn't work, and you can only do that with a testing budget, really. So I think, yeah, I think going into next year, I would hope to see a larger portion of budgets allocated to testing than I think we've ever seen previously.
Okay, it makes sense. And again, it's something that we've talked about a lot, or in our case, Sam's talked about a lot in terms of that testing and trying to get those budgets. Sam, I'm assuming that you would agree with having that testing budget and that innovation budget there. Is there anything else that you'd sort of expect to see as we move into 26 on the budget side of things?
I think Matt and Shane's covered it all. I think the only other bit I'd add is if you're not diversifying your sort of ads across multiple channels, or you're just focusing on one area, now's the time you really do need to start diversifying. And it leads into the whole testing budget, testing different areas, making sure you know what's tracking so you then know what's being delivered. But yeah, it is all in the same sort of idea that you need to have like budget set aside to test different channels, different creatives, different videos, different like locations, audiences, because everything is changing. So if you're still thinking what you worked in 2025 and 2024 will work in 2026, then you're going to have a big wake-up call.
Yeah, I get it. I think a lot of brands are going to get that wake-up call, if I'm honest. I think that's just where it's going to be. I think despite the planning, despite the changes, despite either making them or just going head in sand mode, I think there are going to be surprises as we move forward. And staying with you, Sam, as we sort of look at 26 and like executing on these strategies, how much do you feel AI will play in those? Whether that is through execution, whether that's through operational, how much do you think that's going to play?
AI is not going away, so you need to work with it. It can provide a lot of efficiencies. It can then allow you to focus on what really matters. So, for example, within Google Ads and search ads, before years ago, you'd have to put a particular bid on each keyword, and then you'd spend a lot of time trying to get the right bid in. Now, Google AI algorithms, whatever they're calling it, that helps take a lot of that work for you with their bidding strategies, like automated bidding strategies. So utilize them, and that allows you to spend more time on things that you can control. Like I mentioned, the creatives, testing, and landing pages.
Yeah, so utilizing what they could provide you and obviously impacting that for efficiency. And Matt, what do you see with the AI element? I mean, whether that's efficiency or operational or execution, how much of a part do you think is going to play in executing strategies next year?
Oh yeah, I'd like the end of that question. So executing strategies. So essentially, AI should be leveraged for efficiency and scalability. AI shouldn't be leveraged for strategy, in essence. So the way that a lot of people use it, and the way that a lot of people should be using it rather, is the human element still dictates strategy, and then it's leveraging the efficiencies from AI to create stuff. So effectively, as Sam's mentioned, you can do kind of ad creatives and all of that kind of thing. It's almost having additional members of the team is how we look at it here, basically. So there's elements that you would previously have done manually that you can now do significantly more efficiently from an AI point of view, and that's how you need to be using it. It's that human element is effectively where people need to continue to be involved, basically. So even if that's down to kind of tone of voice, kind of adding human or adding expert insights within AI generated content, for example, it's those sorts of things that people need to do. But if you're still kind of executing marketing without using AI, then you're going to get left behind. Basically, you're not going to be able to scale in the same way, because there'll be your competitors will essentially be able to theoretically double their marketing headcount by leveraging AI in the right way.
And just to pick up really quickly on the execution of strategies, not actually the creating of strategies, what would your warning be for those that are considering using AI to create the strategy?
Realistically, AI is very agreeable, and quite frankly, it will tell you what you want to hear, and it can regurgitate stuff very convincingly that sounds really good from the internet, basically. But ultimately, it doesn't have the product knowledge, the audience knowledge. It doesn't see, unless you give it an amazing amount of data, it doesn't have the data required to set and to create an effective strategy, basically. So the danger is kind of reading something and go, yeah, that sounds good, kind of thing. And it's like, it sounds good because it's trained to sound good, basically. And people will go, oh, what do you think about this? This is my statement. What do you think about it? And AI is going to say, yeah, that sounds great, because that's the way AI is created. It's not there to challenge you, basically. You have to force it to challenge you. So if you don't, at the very least, if you're not kind of using it if you're not challenging or asking it to challenge you on your assumptions, you're just going to end up with a very generic strategy, basically. And ultimately, if you're using AI, effectively how it's trained is on all of the information that is available to it on the internet. All of that information is also available to you, basically. It's available to everybody. The differentiator is the kind of the ability to interpret and kind of prioritize that data to give you the strategy that is going to work very specifically for you, not for a generic company.
And I guess just a final point on that, it can also be that AI is using old data from previous years, so therefore it's not actually up to date, it's not based on your ICP and that for the strategies going forward.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool, thank you. And Shane, just finally, in terms of where you see AI playing a role as we move into 26.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the execution side of things rather than strategy, but I can only really echo what Sam and Matt have both said. I think ultimately most people are going to try and use it. There are definitely efficiencies to be made, but the ones that win with it are the ones who are going to get the balance right between human oversight and the efficiencies, essentially. To give two kind of specific examples, AI plays a big part of Google Ads now, and it can be incredibly useful. But I think anyone who just sets a campaign up and hopes that AI will just take it from there is ultimately going to fail. It needs that strategic human oversight. On the SEO side of things, AI can be really useful with sort of content creation, but anyone who just sticks a title in and says, write me a blog on this, it's not going to work. I mean, as an agency, we've spent years trying to sort of craft content creation and kind of content planning, and it does take time. And even when you have that kind of product in a really good position, it still requires that human oversight as well. It just doesn't work without it. So I think people will use it, but whether it works or not will depend on the balance they get between the efficiency and the human oversight.
Yeah, absolutely. Human oversight needs to be in everything when it comes to AI, because there's going to be basic mistakes. There's going to be sort of, is it telling you the truth? Is it telling you the right information? Is it sending you the right places? So human insight when AI is used is paramount. Okay, just moving on. I'm really conscious of the time and where we're up to at this point. So I'm going to move on for the final time, the last question of the series. I'm going to start and come to you, Shane. If you could give one piece of advice to any of the CMOs that are watching here today about planning for 2026, what would it be?
I think from me, it would be aware of all of the change that's going on and try to embrace it. I'm a realist. I know there aren't endless budget pots and sort of really big teams, so you can only really do so much. But I think one of the biggest mistakes people can make is kind of ignoring things like GEO or ignoring things like the change in buying cycle and just hoping what they were doing previously will work next year. It's a huge mistake. I think we need to embrace the change, and I think those that do embrace the change, they don't have to do everything, but those that do embrace it will see the results next year, and they will have that kind of first starter advantage as well. So yeah, that would be my one piece of advice.
It's a good piece of advice, something I completely agree with. Sam, for the final time in the series, similar to you, what one piece of advice would you give to a CMO planning for next year?
Be bold in like reallocating budget, not necessarily like see what has worked in the past may not work now, but also throughout the year as things do change, you do need to keep that budget quite flexible. So I just say be bold, focus on what's actually driving business growth and the revenue in the pipeline.
That's great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Matt, last but most definitely not least, what piece of advice would you give to a CMO for next year?
I think in reality, the risk for next year isn't going too fast. The risk for next year is standing still or not even trialing something. So I'm a big advocate of, if you think something's going to work, test it. If it fails, it fails, but at least you know. If you stand still and you try and do the things that you've always done, you're going to get probably not even the results you've always got, in essence. So the real danger is just kind of standing still and expecting the market to be the same, because it definitely isn't. The people who will be most effective moving forward are the people who are able to be agile, do things quickly, and really leverage all of the new tools and all of the new opportunities that are available.
So this brings the end of today's session and the final chapter of our digital marketing series. A big thank you again to Sam, Shane and Matt for all of your insights across the entire series, and for everybody who has joined us. If there's one thing to take away from today, it's this: 2026 doesn't reward those who play it safe. It rewards those who plan with purpose, test with agility, and make bold bets in the right place. From creative and content to geo, data and trust, these rules are shifting, but the fundamentals remain the same. You need to know your customer, you need to tell a consistent story, measure what matters, and always leave room for what's next. If you'd like to continue the conversation, however, it's sense checking your 2026 strategy, exploring how we're helping others take the right bets, or just getting a second opinion, we'd love to chat. Thanks again for being part of this series, and here's to building something exceptional in 2026. Thank you.